Chapter 27, the First World War. So in this chapter, we will, of course, be looking at World War I. We'll look at the Treaty of Versailles and the Russian Revolution. The road to war, and we're starting with growing international conflict. So the First World War began partly because European statesmen failed to deal with the problems that Germany created in their rise to greatness. Bismarck had insisted after 1871 that Germany only wanted peace, but really his goal was to keep an embittered France from developing military allies, and that was his way of achieving that peace. If you think back to the Franco-Prussian War, Bismarck and the Prussian army had defeated France very quickly and took two of their richest provinces, Alsace and Lorraine. Another concern was the threat to peace that was posed by the multinational empires of Austria-Hungary and Russia, where the strength of the Ottoman Empire was fading. And so there was speculation that those two may try to take over what was left of the Ottoman Empire. Bismarck's foreign policy accomplishments were good, but the carefully planned alliance system that he set up began to unravel after he was dismissed by the new German Emperor William II, or Kaiser Wilhelm II, in 1890. Part of the problem was that Wilhelm refused to renew a non-aggression pact with Russia, and that was the centerpiece of Bismarck's system. And Russia was willing to keep up the non-aggression pact. And so this prompted France to sort of court Russia by offering her loans, arms, and support. And so basically two rival alliances emerged. You had the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria, and Italy that faced an increasingly hostile dual alliance of Russia and France. And so after 1891, Great Britain was the only great power without a permanent alliance. In Europe, that is. The good relationship that had existed between Prussia and Great Britain since about 1750 began to give way to this bitter Anglo-German rivalry, commercial rivalry in world markets, Germany's ambitious pursuit of colonies, and Germany's decision in 1900 to expand its battle fleet all contributed to this growing animosity. And so Britain, France, Russia, and even the United States began to see Germany as a potential threat that might seek to dominate all of Europe. And Germany's decision to add this large, enormously expensive fleet of big gun battleships to its already expanding navy heightened tensions. And so the eventual alliance of Britain, France, and Russia and the Triple Entente were in direct opposition to the German-led Triple Alliance. And this basically signaled the failure of European leaders to incorporate Bismarck's mighty empire permanently and peacefully into the international system. The mood of 1914. So Germany, of course, was famous for its aggressive militarism, but this militarism actually began to play a prominent role in the affairs of ordinary people across Europe. All of the great powers designed quick mobilization plans that rushed men and weapons off to the battlefield, and all of them except for Great Britain built up their armed forces through universal conscription, or the draft, which exposed hundreds of thousands of young men to military culture and discipline. And of course, the continent hadn't experienced a major conflict since the Franco-Prussian War in 1870, and Europeans vastly underestimated the destructive possibilities of modern weaponry. They had this idea that war was glorious and manly and heroic, and that the conflict would be over quickly. And these ideas permeated European society. Support for military values was linked to a growing sense of popular nationalism, and there was broad popular commitment to national interests above all else. And so this patriotic nationalism did bring unity in the short run, but the wealthy governing classes forgot that great wars and great social revolutions go hand in hand. So the outbreak of war. So on June 28th, 1914, Archduke Francis Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, heirs to the Austro-Hungarian throne, were assassinated in Sarajevo, Bosnia, by a Serbian nationalist, Gavrilo Princip, and he was a fanatical member of a radical young group called Young Bosnia. And between 1900 and 1914, the Western powers had forced Ottomans to give up control of their European territories. And the ethnic nationalism inspired by the changing of these state boundaries was destroying the Ottomans and threatening Austria-Hungary. And so independent Serbia, in particular, wanted to build a state that would include all ethnic Serbs. And so they were openly hostile to Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, which both had a large number of Serbs. The leaders of Austria-Hungary came to the conclusion that Serbia was behind the Archduke Ferdinand's assassination and that they deserved severe punishment. And so the Austria-Hungarians issued an ultimatum to Serbia, and the ultimatum said that they would have to accept an Austro-Hungarian inquiry into the assassination or an investigation, despite the fact that they claimed they were already conducting their own investigation. And they told Serbia that they had to suppress all anti-Austrian propaganda and take steps to root out and eliminate any terrorist organizations like the one Gavrilo was supposedly associated with. And so Serbia replied evasively, sort of skirted around the issue, and this caused Austria to mobilize its armies and declare war on Serbia on July 28th of 1914. The German chancellor had, of course, promised Austria-Hungary Germany's unconditional support in case of war. And so in Vienna, they took a hard line against the Serbs at a time when moderation might still have worked. They could have worked it out without warfare. But Germany was really behind this, egging Austria-Hungary on to confront the Serbs. And so war broke out. The diplomatic situation really spiraled quickly out of control, and military plans and timetables began to dominate policy. And so a day later, on July 29th, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia ordered full mobilization. And in effect, he was declaring war on two fronts against Germany and Austria. And so the German General Staff, also thinking of a two-front war, rolled out their misguided Schlieffen plan, which I probably butchered that, but I will put that up here for us to L-I-E. And this called for a quick victory over France and following a lightning attack through Belgium, after which Germany would turn on Russia. And so German armies invaded neutral Belgium on August the 3rd, and Great Britain, repulsed by the fact that they would march through a neutral area, declared war on Germany the following day. And so excited crowds shouting pro-war slogans pushed politicians and military leaders toward this confrontation, and it turned a small Austrian-Serbian war into a European-wide conflict in a little over a month. Waging total war, the stalemate and slaughter on the Western Front. Though many people at the start of the war thought that this conflict would be short-lived, the belligerent armies quickly realized on the Western Front in France and in the Eastern Front in Russia that this new and extremely costly kind of warfare called total war would not be short-lived. On the front lines, this meant a lengthy, violent war with deadly battles fought with new weapons produced by a highly industrialized society. And at home, national economies were geared for this. They were producing wartime goods, wartime weapons. And so, with the outbreak of war, Russian armies immediately attacked eastern Germany, forcing them to transfer many of their troops to the east, which derailed their plans to quickly capture Paris, because they had to go make sure that Russians didn't attack them or take land in the east. So on September 6th of 1914, the French attacked a gap in the German line at the Battle of Marne, and after 3 days successfully repelled the German advance, thereby saving France. And armies on both sides dug in behind rows of trenches and mines and barbed wire defenses. And of course, the cost of lives in trench warfare was staggering, and the gains in territory minuscule. Recently invented weapons like the machine gun, hand grenades, poison gas, the airplane, the tank made battle impersonal and extremely deadly. And these products of the industrial age favored the defense. They increased casualty rates, and they revolutionized the practice of war. And for 4 years, generals repeated the same mistakes, mounting these massive offenses against highly fortified trenches that resulted in no substantial territory gains. And in 1916, the unsuccessful German campaign against Verdun cost 700,000 lives on both sides and ended in a draw. And then the Battle of Somme, which was a British offensive that began in June 1916, dragged on till November, by which time the British had pushed the Germans back all of 7 miles. And there were 420,000 British, 200,000 French, and 600,000 Germans that had been killed or wounded defending this 7-mile piece of territory. The widening war. So on the Eastern Front, the Germans were able to hold off initial Russian attacks and won major victories at the battles of Tannenberg and Masurian Lakes in August and September of 1914. And by 1915, about 2.5 million Russian soldiers had been either killed, wounded, or captured, and German armies occupied huge sections of Russian territory. And so the Germans installed in this territory a vast military bureaucracy of about 15,000 army administrators and professional specialists to govern this and any occupied territory in Central Europe. And during that time, about a third of the civilian population, or non-soldiers, were killed or became refugees under this brutal occupation. And so Italy, which had been a member of the Triple Alliance since 1882, had declared neutrality in 1914. But in May of 1915, they joined the Triple Entente of Great Britain, France, and Russia in return for promises of Austrian territory. And then the entry of the Ottoman Turks on the side of the Central Powers, or Austria and Germany, in October 1914 carried the war all the way to the Middle East. And in 1915, there were some Armenians that welcomed the Russian armies like they were liberators. And the Ottomans got so angry that they ordered a mass deportation of its Armenian citizens. And this was modern ethnic cleansing, now called the Armenian Genocide, where 1 million innocent civilians died from murder, starvation, and disease. And so there was really a widening effect here. It wasn't just affecting the army. It wasn't just affecting Europe. It began to spread even further than that. The British had made some vague promises to an independent Arab kingdom and their leader, whose name was Hussein ibn Ali, in return for his joining forces with the British and leading Arab soldiers into guerrilla warfare against the Turks on the Arabian Peninsula. And so with Arab help, the British actually occupied the Iraqi city of Basra, maybe saying that wrong. In 1914, they captured Baghdad in 1917 and rolled on into Syria in September of 1918. The war also spread to colonial Africa and East Asia, where the colonial subjects of Great Britain and France helped British and French commanders seize Germany's colonies. So more than 1 million Africans and Asians served in the various armies of the warring powers. Not to mention, after a German submarine sank the British passenger liner Lusitania in May 1915 with 139 U.S. citizens, even the United States began to prepare for war. And of course, Woodrow Wilson wasn't ready to jump into the World War just yet, but with the discovery of the Zimmerman Note and the unrestricted German submarine warfare, eventually even the United States would become involved in this great war in April of 1917. And of course, the Americans would enter on the side of the Triple Entente and balance the favor in that direction. And we'll go ahead and bring this to an end, and we'll pick up in the next video with the home front.